years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
$200 billion. That's how much wealth Disney erased in 18 months. Not from a scandal, not from a pandemic, not from a market crash, but from sheer stubborn arrogance. You know, there's a story older than kingdoms about this kind of fall. A people, drunk on their own brilliance, build a tower to touch the heavens. It's not enough to survive, not enough to thrive. They want to ascend, they want to replace God. The modern Tower of Babel isn't made of stone and mortar. It's made of theme parks, billion-dollar franchises, and a mouse who never gets old. For decades, Disney was untouchable. They owned childhood itself. But empires built on hubris don't just stumble, they collapse. And when the most powerful storytelling company on earth forgets how to tell stories, the whole culture feels the shockwave. They controlled what families watched, what children imagined, and everyone bowed, until suddenly they didn't. The fall didn't happen all at once, but the cracks were there long before the tower started crumbling. And here's what no one wants to admit. Disney's collapse isn't just about bad leadership or political missteps or box office bombs. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when a corporation thinks it's bigger than the culture that built it. They believe they could rewrite everything: history, biology, heroism, masculinity, even reality itself, and no one would question it. But the audience did, and now the illusion is breaking. This is the story of how Disney lost the magic, and what their downfall reveals about the sickness infecting modern culture. Let's begin. In March 2021, Disney's market cap crossed $350 billion. By late 2022, it was barely clinging to $167 billion. So more than $200 billion erased quietly, steadily, embarrassingly. No scandal, no pandemic panic, no dramatic death blow. The collapse came slow, the kind that looks like denial, the kind that comes from bad bets made by people too powerful to be told they were wrong. Let's stop pretending this was a surprise. For example, Disney didn't launch Disney Plus because they had a bold vision. They launched it because they were terrified of Netflix. Every executive meeting had the same unspoken fear. What happens if we're not the ones programming childhood anymore? So they threw billions at content. Not crafted, not curated, not strategic, just volume. Thousands of hours of content no one asked for. Spin-offs, reboots, brand necromancy. In 2022, their streaming losses hit $1.5 billion in a single quarter. Total losses passed $11 billion by 2023. And what did they get? A subscriber base paying $4.35 a month on average. They set fire to their war chest for the privilege of competing in a race they were 10 years late to. Bob Chapek was the kind of CEO you hire when you're not sure if you're a tech company, a toy company, or a nostalgia graveyard. He didn't build, he just optimized, and nothing kills creative energy faster than optimization. He cut theatrical windows short, pissed off Scarlett Johansson, botched pandemic-era releases, and hid behind PR speak every time the company touched politics. He wasn't hated because he was evil. He was hated because he was nothing. Even investors gave up on him. When Chapek was fired in 2022, the stock bounced, but not for long. It was too late. The rot had set in. The market moved on and took the culture with it. When Disney's stock collapsed by nearly 60%, it wasn't treated like breaking news. There was no panic, no Wall Street crisis meetings, no too big to fail hand-wringing, because deep down everyone already knew this wasn't contemporary. It was just correction. Analysts stopped talking about the Disney decade. They started whispering about missed earnings, broken brands, and boardroom infighting. And outside the investor calls, parents were canceling subscriptions. Former fans were skipping films, and Gen Z wasn't watching at all. It was not just a rough patch, this was like a signal. Disney, the company that once held monopoly on childhood wonder, was losing relevance, and no amount of synergy, spin-offs, or CEO musical chairs could bring it back. Disney tried to act like Netflix without being built like Netflix. They bet on quantity over quality, burned billions, and handed the wheel to a man who didn't know how to drive.
For years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
There's a moment when a company stops speaking to its audience and starts lecturing them. Disney hit that moment around 2018, but the signs were there long before. For decades, Disney sold values: Wholesome, sanitized, market-tested values. Family, bravery, love, triumph. Not because they believed in anything, but because it sold well in Kansas and in Tokyo and Sao Paulo. But then something shifted. They stopped pretending they were neutral. In March 2022, leaked footage from an internal Disney meeting went viral. An executive producer proudly discussed her not at all secret gay agenda. She talked about adding queerness wherever possible, including in content for preschoolers. Another executive announced that at least 50% of Disney characters would be LGBTQ or racial minorities going forward. Not because stories demanded it, but because spreadsheets did.
So we no longer say ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We've provided training for all of our cast members in relationship to that. So now they know it's hello everyone or hello friends.
I'm here as a mother of two queer children, actually, one transgender child and one pansexual child. And also as a leader. Many LGBTQIA characters in our stories, and yet we don't have enough leads and narratives in which gay characters just get to be characters.
The showrunners were super welcoming. Meredith Roberts and like our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. And so let's have these two characters kiss. Let's in the background I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud of them. But I just was no one would stop me and no one was trying to.
And let's be honest, this was not inclusion, it was ideology with a quota system. They started gutting beloved stories to fit modern political frameworks. The Little Mermaid remake turned a bright, joyful fairy tale into a lecture about representation. Buzz Lightyear included a same-sex kiss that added nothing to the story, but generated headlines. Snow White's lead actress publicly trashed the original as weird and outdated.
Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Even Tinkerbell got a race swap controversy. Each time, Disney executives acted like they were fixing moral failings in stories that had inspired millions. The audience wasn't buying it. They could feel the difference between authentic storytelling and corporate virtue signaling. Lightyear wasn't just a box office bomb. It was a case study in ideological overreach. Nobody asked for Buzz Lightyear's origin story. Nobody cared about intergalactic time dilation. And nobody needed a same-sex kiss shoehorned into a Toy Story spin-off. But Disney needed the headlines. They needed to signal their values. The film lost over $100 million. Countries banned it. Parents skipped it. Kids ignored it. Because when you lead with messaging instead of magic, nobody shows up for either. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Disney built its empire by understanding Middle America better than anyone. Then it turned around and told Middle America it was the problem. You don't get to lecture the people who built your castle. Wokeness wasn't the disease, it was the symptom of a company that forgot how to speak human and started speaking like an HR department with a Netflix subscription.
Hey Bob, if you're in the audience.
When Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012 for $4 billion, it wasn't a gamble. It was a coronation. They weren't acquiring a franchise. They were buying the last true American mythology. Star Wars wasn't a brand. It was like a religion. Generational, global, a cultural touchstone so powerful, people built identities around it. And Disney, in its infinite arrogance, walked in like it understood any of that. The first warning sign was The Force Awakens, a film that made $2 billion and felt empty. It was a reboot with a new cast wearing the skins of old icons. Same Death Star, same desert planet, same orphan protagonist with force powers and no training. And that was the high point, because after that, Disney decided to burn the sacred texts. The Last Jedi didn't just divide the fanbase, it obliterated it. Rian Johnson was handed the keys to the kingdom and used them to lock the doors behind him. He took Luke Skywalker, the archetypal hero of a generation, and turned him into a bitter, cowardly hermit who drank alien milk and sneered at the very idea of heroism. Not subversion or innovation, just contempt. And Disney backed him, publicly, loudly, aggressively. They told critics to ignore the trolls. They told fans they were fragile. They mistook backlash for bigotry and sold it to the press as bravery. But what they didn't sell was tickets. Solo, a Star Wars story, bombed. The Rise of Skywalker was a frantic tone-deaf apology tour. Merchandise sales collapsed. Theme park attendance stagnated. Even The Mandalorian, arguably the only post-buyout success, felt like a quiet rebellion against Lucasfilm's own leadership. Favreau and Filoni kind of understood Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy didn't. She was installed by Iger as Lucasfilm president and was supposed to be the next Kevin Feige. Instead, she became a symbol of corporate ego, masquerading as creative vision. Under her watch, Star Wars became hostile to its own fanbase. Major directors walked away or were fired. Projects were announced with no scripts or casts or vision. And worst of all, the brand stopped feeling sacred. You don't have to agree with every fanboy meltdown on Reddit, but when the people who love you most start walking away, you don't get to blame them for noticing you've changed. And Star Wars fans didn't just walk away, they ran. Disney didn't ruin Star Wars by taking risks. They ruined it by pretending they understood something they never respected, by weaponizing identity politics to shield lazy writing and then acting surprised when no one showed up to care. There was a time when Pixar didn't miss. From 1995 to 2015, they built a run that almost defied logic. Toy Stories, Monsters, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, WALL-E, Up, Inside Out, every film a gut punch wrapped in pixels. They weren't kids' movies, they were life lessons disguised as animation. Death, memory, purpose, growing old, letting go, all handled with a depth that most live-action films couldn't even touch. Pixar really mattered, and then Disney got involved. After the full acquisition in 2006, Pixar still had juice, but the clock was ticking. Once Disney Plus entered the picture, the studio's role shifted from artistic powerhouse to content mill. The first casualty was the theatrical experience. Soul was dumped on streaming. Luca went straight to Disney Plus. Turning Red never saw a single cinema screen. This was just disrespectful. Audiences started to forget that Pixar used to mean something. Kids watched these films out of boredom, not anticipation. Adults didn't watch them at all. And then came Lightyear, a film so confused by its own existence, it had to explain itself in the opening title card. It wasn't a sequel, it wasn't a spin-off. It was a movie that Andy watched in 1995 that inspired the Buzz Lightyear toy, but also had a different voice actor and tackled intergalactic time dilation and threw in a same-sex kiss because corporate needed a headline. Of course no one cared. The film bombed, losing over $100 million. Not because it was offensive, but because it was hollow, a soulless product engineered to generate engagement metrics, not emotional connection. Meanwhile, Elemental arrived in 2023 and quietly became Pixar's biggest box office embarrassment. The market was incoherent, the characters were paper thin, and the theme, Opposites Attract, meets Immigration is Hard, dressed up in particle effects. Even insiders admitted morale was low. Pixar veterans were leaving. Audiences had stopped trusting the brand. And why should they? When every new release feels like a therapy session written by marketing committee, why would anyone pay for catharsis that doesn't even land? Once upon a time, Pixar made movies for the kid in you and the adult you became. Now it makes movies for social media think pieces. Pixar didn't decline because it got too progressive or too weird. It declined because it stopped being sincere. The soul got replaced by messaging and the magic by algorithms.
For years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Remember when Iron Man felt dangerous? It was around 2008. The lead actor was a gamble. The tone was fresh. Marvel wasn't a studio yet. It was a long shot with something to prove. Fast forward to our times, you're 3 hours into Ant-Man and the quantum thermostat of multiversal bureaucracy. Nothing matters, everything's CGI, nobody's clapping. Even the end credits scene feels like homework. And let me be clear, this is not superhero fatigue, it's just bullshit fatigue. After Endgame, Marvel had two choices: tell fewer, better stories, or industrialize the formula. They chose the latter. More shows, more movies, more phases. At one point, they announced 31 projects in development at the same time. That's not world building, that's just world diluting. Let's talk some numbers. Avengers Endgame made $2.7 billion. The Marvels made $206 million. Ant-Man 3 lost over $130 million. Disney Plus shows like She-Hulk and Secret Invasion barely trended. Streaming engagement plummeted by 40% across Marvel titles post-2022. Merchandise sales fell so hard they stopped reporting them. And remember when Marvel was untouchable with critics? Rotten Tomatoes scores for post-Endgame films have been nosediving. The audience isn't mad, they're done. Marvel forgot how to build characters. Tony Stark had an arc. Steve Rogers had a soul. Now we get cardboard cutouts with ironic quips and no consequences. You meet a character, you get their trauma dump, you wait for the third act skybeam, and then the credits tease someone else you also don't care about. And don't even start with phase 4. It wasn't a phase, it was like a marketing collapse stretched into 18 hours of VFX vomit and virtue signaling. They chased representation points instead of narrative stakes. They replaced drama with discourse. They let writers pitch themes before they pitched plots, and the results were easy to predict. Movies nobody watches twice. Shows nobody finishes. Heroes nobody remembers. Marvel's fall wasn't inevitable, it was deliberate. They chose scale over soul, lore over logic, and in doing so they killed the only thing that made the MCU work: emotional investment.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Now let's shift gears for a second. This is a subject nobody at Disney wants to talk about, because it's not about box office numbers or bad writing. It's about trust, and once you lose that with families, no rebrand can save you. In March 2022, Florida passed HB 1557, a bill banning classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity. Supporters called it a parental rights law. Opponents called it "Don't Say Gay." At first, Disney stayed silent, until activist employees started a firestorm inside the company, accusing leadership of not doing enough. So under pressure, then CEO Bob Chapek reversed course. He condemned the bill, publicly, loudly, and suddenly, Disney wasn't just a media company, it was a political player. That shift was not subtle. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis retaliated hard, stripping Disney of its special tax district privileges in Reedy Creek, which it had held for over 50 years. This obviously became a legal warfare. Lawsuits were filed, board control was seized. DeSantis declared Disney a woke corporation that had crossed the line. And here's the thing, he was not alone. Millions of parents, many of them lifelong Disney customers, started asking a question Disney couldn't answer. Why is a company built on children's entertainment getting involved in sexual politics for 5-year-olds? It didn't matter what the bill said. It didn't matter what side you were on. The damage came from the optics. $1 billion megacorp taking a public stance on kindergarten sexuality curriculum. The kind of thing that makes parents back away, not because they're bigots, but because they want boundaries.
We've been going to Disney for a long time, and we're tired of the extreme changes that they seem to think are pleasing everyone, when if they actually spoke to the people in the park, they'd find out they're not.
They need to stay out of politics. He's right on. We need to protect our kindergartners and first graders and second graders. They don't need to hear that stuff.
My belief is, and I'm a parent myself, is that it is the parents' jobs to teach their children on the society of the norms and of the norms of their household.
Everything he's doing is protecting families and protecting the people in the state, and I just love everything he's doing.
There's a lot more important topics those kids could be learning, and I think they need to be given a chance to develop themselves before they start being taught about what they should be.
And then came the leaked Zoom call. Again, not illegal, but when it came out during an already inflamed political moment, it poured gasoline on the fire. Memes exploded.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Maybe we should go a different route than we did with Indiana Jones.
Fuck Indiana Jones, put a chick in it and make her name it gay!
Sure, yeah. Well, let's try that.
Conservative pundits went nuclear, and instead of de-escalating, Disney doubled down, committing to even more inclusivity in kids' content without addressing the core concern: parental trust. Let's be brutally clear here for a second. The issue isn't LGBTQ plus representation. It's Disney's complete misunderstanding of its role. You're not the government, you're not a social movement. You're the company that sells Cinderella dresses and Toy Story bedsheets. The second you forget that, you lose the trust of the people who built your empire, and that's parents. Disney mistook activist applause for public support. They believed corporate morality was a shield. Instead, they exposed themselves as out of touch, reactive, and politically reckless.
For years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Disney Plus was supposed to be the Netflix killer. Instead, it became a money furnace that exposed everything wrong with modern Disney. To feed Disney Plus, they didn't create, they just industrialized. Marvel shows became homework assignments. Star Wars spin-offs felt like obligation viewing. Everything had to be content instead of stories. Secret Invasion. Samuel Jackson sleepwalked through 6 episodes of green screen mediocrity. Fans called it the worst Marvel project ever made. The Book of Boba Fett. Entire episodes without the title character. Even hardcore Star Wars fans gave up. By 2023, Disney was quietly removing content from Disney Plus to claim tax losses. Shows they'd spent millions producing were deleted from existence. Not because nobody watched them, though nobody did, because keeping them online cost more than erasing them. That's just admitting defeat with accounting tricks. Netflix built around data and audience retention. Disney built around nostalgia and brand recognition. Netflix created new cultural phenomena. Disney recycled old ones until they broke. In the end, Disney Plus didn't fail because streaming is hard. It failed because Disney misunderstood what made its stories worth paying for. They thought nostalgia and IP were enough. Well, they weren't. Bob Iger built the modern Disney. He acquired Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and 20th Century Fox. He was seen as the golden CEO, smooth, strategic, corporate statesman. But here's the part the media never said out loud. Bob Iger created the exact bomb that later exploded in his face. Every move Iger made looked brilliant in the moment. Pixar restored animation credibility. Marvel opened the cash printing franchise. Lucasfilm secured the cultural monopoly. Fox consolidated power. But every one of these acquisitions came with massive expectations and a countdown clock. And instead of investing in new creative talent, Disney kept squeezing the same brands until they turned to dust. No reinvention, no risks, just recycling. Iger built a machine that fed itself, but he never planned for what happens when the machine runs out of fuel. Then came Bob Chapek. He didn't understand creatives, didn't understand the fans, didn't understand when to stay quiet. Nobody respected him, everyone blamed him. And when the stock tanked, the board dragged Iger out of semi-retirement like a washed-up quarterback with a bad shoulder. But Iger's second act isn't a comeback story, it's just a cleanup job, and it's not going very well. He stalled streaming growth, slashed budgets, hinted at selling off ESPN and ABC. He's admitted they made too many sequels and spin-offs, but it all feels too late, because the audience isn't listening anymore. The trust is broken, the content is stale, and the leadership looks like it's running out of ideas faster than it's running out of money. And let's be honest, this was not bad luck. This was ego, it was denial, and it was overreach. Iger built a kingdom with no succession plan. Chapek proved unfit to rule it. Now both Bobs are trying to salvage the wreckage, while pretending the ship isn't already underwater.
For years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
This next section isn't about Disney's stock price or its failed movies or its CEOs. It's about what we lost, because Disney wasn't just a company. It was like a cultural landmark. It gave generations a shared language. The moment Simba's father dies, the dance in the ballroom, the genie's laugh, the first time you heard To Infinity and Beyond. These weren't just scenes. They were like timestamps. They marked who we were and what we felt. And now it's gone. Like watching someone you love lose their memory in real time. Ask any kid under 10 what Disney movie they love. You'll just get silence or confusion, or maybe something from 20 years ago. Ask their parents. They will say that they don't trust Disney anymore. They're tired of ideological lectures, tired of soulless sequels. And this is not conservative backlash, and it's not progressive fatigue. is just emotional erosion. Disney used to give meaning. Now it gives messaging. They used to speak to the child in you. Now they target your demographic profile. And maybe that's the most tragic part. Because no one else had to be told how important Disney was. We just felt it. And now the feeling is gone. And do you know what the culture loses when Disney dies? It's not a mascot. It's not a franchise. It's a mirror, a reflection of who we were. Now the mirror is cracked, and the people holding the pieces are smiling like nothing happened. The Tower of Babel fell because its builders forgot they were human. They thought they could rewrite the laws of physics, biology, even reality itself. Disney's tower fell for the same reasons. They forgot they were storytellers. They thought they could rewrite culture, childhood, and human nature. And when the audience stopped believing in their magic, the whole illusion crumbled, brick by billion-dollar brick. And now they're watching the castle crumble. They will blame politics, they will blame audiences, they will blame the algorithm. But the truth is, the moment you start preaching at people instead of inspiring them, you don't get to call yourself the Magic Kingdom anymore, because the illusion is broken. The spell is gone and nobody's clapping. Not because they're mad, but because they finally stopped believing. The ruins are still smoking, and everyone's pretending they didn't see it coming.
For years, we've ventured into a lot of different fields, and we've had the opportunity to meet and work with a lot of wonderful people. I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.